Um, Hello everybody, my name is Brent In. I currently get to teach Miss Grace and Justin too, and Devon. So I got offered a full-time position with the Criminal Justice Department. Oh, hello. And starting this fall semester, but I was teaching the previous semesters also. So I was asked to kind of give a talk about community corrections, or corrections in general. So what I decided to do is I wasn't going to have a meet with my friend anyways. I dragged him in. He's got more interesting stuff to tell than I do. And we hope to kind of give you a broad a sense of what corrections field looks like. Oftentimes we see, we understand criminal justice system as the front end, middle end, and the tail end, right? There's no such thing as middle end. There's a middle and then the tail end, right? In the front, you have people who are police officers or investigative agents, and then you move into the court system, right? And then after that, you go into the prison system, and then into halfway houses, and then out into the community corrections. So where does the correctional department or personnel all fall into? You'll be surprised that they kind of go all over the map. Okay, and we're gonna try to cover each one of those, and hopefully it will prompt some ideas for you all to see whether you want to be at the tail end, in the middle, or the front end. Okay. The reason why the correctional people are in the front end is oftentimes because you have a bunch of investigations taking place through the corrections, and therefore in the front end, they get involved with a lot of this new investigations and new indictments. Okay? Not as much as you have other people who are, just devoted to that, but you have a lot of correctional folks who can do many different things, and hopefully we can touch up on that. And we'll share with you what our specialty was, because we were, what would they call specialists in our field. But I just want to kind of touch up on some facts about our population, our criminal justice population, that I think you need to be aware of. It's a growing population only because it's unfortunate that this whole area is growing. We have 731 detainees in over 3,000 jails on a daily basis. Okay, 731,000 doesn't sound like much, but if you look at the next line. Annually, there's 11 million, close to 12 million people coming in and out of jails, okay? There's a difference between jails and prisons, you know that, right? So these detention centers are just filled with people coming in and being prosecuted. In Cook County Jail, which we're going to be talking about because both Mr. Rosenthal and I have spent many years in there, is the largest single site jail, single site. LA is bigger, but they have multiple sites. In state of Illinois, we're proud to say that it's the single largest jail site in the world, okay? Any given day, we have about 13,000 plus detainees housed over there, okay? So it's a huge, huge place, centered around 26th in California all the way down to the 31st in California, okay? Even there, when Mr. Rosenthal and I would work there, any given day we would have about anywhere from 300 to 500 people coming in. And then, of course, at the end of the week, they all are leaving, either being released to community or being sent to prison because they got sentenced. Generally of the jail detainees, only 38% actually get convicted. 68% are not found guilty and they're let out. Okay. So what that basically means is it's a huge interruption in people's lives, right? So imagine any one of you, let's say Justin was caught up in a sweep, he hangs around, those rowdy party scenes, and he gets arrested and gets taken to county jail. He gets lost in there, right? His paper gets shuffled and gets lost. If he held a job at one of the places, let's say a restaurant around here to supplement his his living, do you suppose that place will hold on to his job for him when he gets out? Okay, so these are the problems that people face when they're locked up in county jail. Now, of the 38% who are actually convicted, how many of you do you think they're really, really convicted whether they're guilty? Or what percentage are convicted because they had to plead guilty. Okay? So oftentimes people will take the plea deal only because they need to get out to take care of the family and so on and so forth. It's a sad story, but these are the facts. So what we want to do, Mr. Rosenthal and I, we were federal officers, but we didn't take this route of catch the bad guys and throw them away, throw the key away. We took a very different approach. And so, because we saw the reality of the system that's broken, okay? All right, so 2.5 million people incarcerated in the United States. The United States makes up the 5% of the world population, and yet we take up 25% of the entire incarcerated population in the world. Okay? So you need to be thinking about that. What does that mean? Why does our country, the leading democracy of the world, incarcerate so many people? Okay? In 2013, close to 7 million persons were under adult correctional supervision. Now it's decreased a little bit, but I assure you it's not going to really go down any further, okay? So what does that mean to you? In real honesty, there's going to be jobs for you, okay? There's going to be job opportunities for you. You just need to know where to go, okay? There's a whole lot of people. You know why that's going to increase? Because it's so much cheaper to supervise people out in the community than have them incarcerated inside, okay? What's an average cost of incarcerating an adult? Anywhere from 30 to 40,000. How about juveniles? It can go anywhere from 80 to 100,000 per year. So 100,000 of the taxpayers' money will be spent on locking up juveniles, okay? About 30 to 40,000 will be spent on locking up adults, okay? I know you guys are like shaking your head. That's my tuition. That's my college, expense. That's right. For an annual, that's what it costs your hard-earned tax money, okay? That's going to be all spent on locking people up, okay? Incarceration of women, especially, I see a lot of women here, and Loyola is known for that. You guys have about 75% of the student body are females. This should be of interest to you. We've been having 888% increase in drug offense, 129% of non-drug offense, 757% overall increase since 1977. There's an increase in women becoming convicted, okay? Being involved in criminal activities, okay? Women's pathway toward crime is very different than men's, less violent. What it spells out to is, it's all about survival. So you have a lot of women being engaged in criminal activities such as drug possession, drug distribution, all of that stuff, or even prostitution, substance abuse, just to survive, okay? So that's what statistics are showing us, okay? And 95% of people who are locked up will eventually come on out. And there needs to be people who are working with them, okay? The reason why that should scare some of us is that when you have been locked up, even just for 2 months, 3 months, how many of you here, let's your hands, have been to Cook County Jail, have seen it? You have? So which part of the Cook County Jail were you at?
I was just not inside of it. I do more inside of it in the juvenile one,
okay.
But it is pretty like it's very like isolated, and then also like it just their bathroom's just like there next to theirs, like where they sleep, and yeah, it's really sad. And, like,
depressing.
Yeah.
How about you? Which division?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Freshman year.
Okay.
That's my junior year.
Okay. So the point that I want to make to you is this. It is one of the most traumatic places to be in, okay? It is one of the most disgusting, horrible places to be in. The volume of noise in Cook County Jail is just, it's very traumatic, okay? So,
just the noise and the food's no good.
Food's no good, okay? Disproportionately, African American Latinos are locked up, okay, in the prison system. This should say something about our system, okay? Prevalence of mental illness and substance abuse. A lot of history of homelessness before they got incarcerated. After they get released, they'll remain homeless, okay? 2 in 5 have not graduated from high school. very low employment rate or legitimate employment. And so when you have survived for 20 years without having legitimate job, you get locked up, you come on out, you're 30 years old now, and you have no work experience, who's going to hire you, okay? This becomes a problem. Now, it has everything to do with corrections, okay? Because think about the word corrections. What is that? You're correcting people, you're rehabilitating people. How do you rehabilitate people when they have no past record of having held a legitimate job? That's a challenge that correctional folks are faced with. So let's understand the re-entry experience from incarceration to freedom. It ain't easy. You move from one dangerous situation to another dangerous situation. A dangerous situation that's very controlled in prison, okay? You line up when they tell you to line up. You stand up when you're told to stand up, okay? You face the wall when they tell you to face the wall. If they tell you to put your hands behind your back, you do that, okay? It's a very controlled environment. It's very dangerous if you don't. You'll find out how dangerous it is by bucking the system, by not following the directions, okay? From that, day in, day out, week to week, month to month, year to year, that's your life, to now you get set free, and now you're in a very uncontrolled environment, which also can become extremely dangerous, okay? So you're going from danger to danger. And as a correctional personnel, you have to really help them navigate through all of that, okay? They're often seen as a second-class citizens because of their background, criminal background. So having presented that to you, what you have to work with as a correctional officer, I'm going to invite Mr. Rosenthal to talk about his experience. Well, he's got a litany of his background here. Mine isn't as nice as his, but you know, he's got. Well, go ahead.
So this is just kind of an extracurricular thing on careers, right?
We're the criminal justice organization.
Okay. And so you're just kind of, instead of teaching a class, you're kind of interested in the careers and criminal justice system. So seniors?
All years.
Okay, all years. So basically, my career path was in mental health for the most part. And my career path was going to be with kids. So I was working not in juvenile corrections, but in a residential treatment home. Once they were done with that, then they got themselves to usually the juvenile. In my search for a career path, there were two driving forces. One was it interesting? And did I find it interesting? And the second one was, any guesses? Is this going to drive your career path a little bit? Okay, so it really was money. And both Mr. In and I got real lucky with regard to that money. And I think pretty lucky with regard to interest. So working with kids did not pay much. And from there I went without just a bachelor's degree in philosophy and psychology. It was a time where the Cook County Jail was sued in federal court for not providing mental health treatment to the people incarcerated. So they successfully finally lost a suit that had been going on for years. And the county hired mental health workers and a few, they didn't have a social worker, but they had some psychologists. And the thing that's really interesting, if you follow the history of Cook County Jail, the Department of Corrections, it has bounced over the last, how old are we, 40 years? It's gone from being county workers, so county-run programs and corrections there, to private. So the mental health was at one point private, and one point county employees. And so they hired just people with bachelor's degrees to be the primary counselors for the mental health people in Cook County Jail. And so we started out with 80, and we grew to eventually, by the time we left, to about 350 beds from 80 beds. From the criminal justice side, Cook County Jail is not a bad job. Correctional officers in there, and I don't know how many there are, but they do real well. The nice thing about, does anybody know what the nice, one of the nice perks of being a Cook County Sheriff's is? So they make about $40,000, $45,000 a year to start these days. What's the nice perk? So I'm real big in systems, so know what kind of system you're working in, okay? And the Cook County Sheriffs need only a high school diploma. So the competition to become a Cook County Sheriff with just a high school degree and make $40,000, $45,000 a year, pretty competitive. Who here is from Chicago? So how do you become, what's the best way to become a Cook County Sheriff? A guess.
Who's your alderman?
There you go. Know somebody.
Yeah, that works.
I'm old school, so I won't say network.
Oh, yeah.
But you want to, I say you have to know somebody. Okay? You know how to spell, right? So you have to know somebody. So especially because they're really pretty decent jobs. Law enforcement in general does not pay what it used to. Chicago Police Department, great job. Why? They still have a union, they still get paid. But if you want to go, work for one of the suburbs, depending on the suburb, they don't pay as much as they used to. Police officers do not make as much money as they used to, so unless you're in the big city or a pretty wealthy suburb, not the best paying jobs that they used to be. Cook County Department of Corrections, the other thing is that you have what, as far as your career path in criminal justice? You have county, you have state, you have people like us that got lucky with the feds, you got an ever-growing private correctional path to go on into. Institutional corrections, I think, are a pretty nice thing. At the federal level, it's the Bureau of Prisons. They want you to have an associate's, at least an associate's, prefer you to have a bachelor's degree. The jobs that we'll talk about later as far as, so this would be Metropolitan Correctional Center is the Bureau of Prisons here in Chicago. Anybody see that building? Have you ever seen it? It's on Jackson?
Van Buren and Federal.
Van Buren Federal. It's a diagonal building. It's the most poorly designed, but won all kind of awards and stuff
Oh, yeah,
like
like
that.
right by the train station.
Yeah. So that's the Metropolitan Correctional Center. They pay a little bit more, but want that associates and stuff like that. And it's a pretty good, the BOP is not a bad system to get into. Illinois Department of Corrections, what state, is there a state that's worse off right now than Illinois?
California.
No, I thought maybe we were next to last and stuff like that. So Illinois corrections jobs still probably pay better than county, but where that pension's going to go and where that stuff is kind of scary. I'll get into a little bit later. Right now, I am working for what is basically a private correctional institution called Rushville, located in Rushville, Illinois, funded by the DOC, Department of Corrections State, not considered a prison, and the mental health community does not consider it a mental health institution, but there are 500 sex offenders deemed sexually violent that have served their time in the state correctional facility, but because they've been deemed sexually violent and dangerous, have been civilly committed. There are 8 states in the union that do this. It's continually being adjudicated as unconstitutional. But nonetheless, as you are, I'm sure you're not necessarily aware of those programs, but there is an ever-growing privatization of correctional institutions throughout the United States. And again, do they pay better? Typically not. Do they have pensions and stuff like that? Typically not. But it is a job, and then how rising in those ranks in that correctional facility. Anybody here interested in institutional corrections? Yeah. So most people who go to school and are here probably have little loftier goals, but I can't say that my time in Cook County Jail, Department of Corrections, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Would not trade it for a world. It gave you a chance where the average length of incarceration was 6 months, anywhere up to 6 years. It gave you a real chance to know offenders. Okay, so you were with them for your 8-hour stint. It's kind of lovely, something to consider. May not pay as much in corrections to be a correctional officer inside an institution, but what happens at the end of the day? What happens at the end of the day in the life of a correctional officer inside the institution? Where do they go? Home. And where does that offender go? And it's very relaxing. It's very relaxing to check in, go. It's not as dangerous. It depends on your personality and how you handle yourself. It's not necessarily as intense and as dangerous and as stressful. I specialize in stress as people would think. When you're a Chicago police officer, when does your day end? Technically, it doesn't. Okay, and you're out in the street. And what could possibly, I mean, most of the days are boring donuts and coffee, don't get me wrong, but when something does happen, it's pretty intense. So there is something to be said for a 9-to-5 job, where you go in and you go out. We have friends and stuff like that, that then, again, career paths. So they're a correctional officer, maybe they have a PI license, and serve subpoenas to augment their salary and stuff like that. Maybe they do some security work. Our friend we used to do security work at Brother Rice for football games, basketball games, and parties. Chicago Yacht Club for the Mackinac race. The Chicago Marathon. Nice little gigs that help augment your money, augment your income, and provide some interesting situations. But so again, it's not the worst career path you can take. It's not a bad, if you see here too, it's not a bad jumping off place. So I would say think about it. Illinois Department of Corrections too, if you're going to get out of the city. Metropolitan Corrections, again, it gets you in the door. It gets you into the door into the federal system, because you need to know somebody, and you also need to know how the system works. Makes it a little bit easier to get into all the different Fed stuff. And right now we're going to talk corrections, so I'm not going to give you all the different little niches within the federal system. And the private stuff is interesting. They're paying me very well right now to work with sex offenders. And kind of nice thing, sort of thing, and also put that out in your mind. Average age of the sex offenders that are coming out of this private institution called Rushville. Anyone want to take a guess? What makes the world go round? What's the average age of these offenders coming out from this system?
Like 70?
That's pretty old. I just got rid of my 78-year-olds, finally got out, but 50 years old. Averages, but you're right on target. Why are they looking to get rid of people that are 50 to 70 years old?
Because it costs a lot to...
Oh man, huge. So I got to give them Social Security, disability, they have diabetes, they have high blood pressure, they have all kind of medical problems. But it is something to consider.
So, what Mr. Rosenthal is trying to portray out for you is not only the very interesting career path, but also the reality, okay? It's not going to be that easy for you to get a job out there with a bachelor's degree. It's not going to be easy trying to, I know every time I teach a class and I ask for a raise of hands and what do you want to do, and you got a bunch of lawyer one of these and federal agent one of these. And I assure you, your chances of, I'm not saying that you're not gonna, but the chances of many people of making it to that level is 0.001%, okay? It's not easy trying to break through those systems. But there's certain things that you can do. And clearly, these are the areas that it could be a good jumping point, okay? Okay, so there's a lot of private institutions that are coming up because it's costing the government so much money. It's easier to just, give portions of the work to the private corporations and have them hire people and run it. Part of the system that Mr. Rosenthal is working for is Liberty Health. Now, Liberty Health was smart. It was started off by one of our colleagues who was a federal officer and with a specialty in mental health. And he recognized right away that there needs to be a system that actually monitors these people, so he was able to get this thing started. Mr. Rosenthal's specialty is electronic monitoring and sex offenders and some military cases, and I specialize in intensive cases in women's security. So, just so that you guys kind of get a flavor for what kind of work is involved, and actually, I did some electronic monitoring before Mr. Rosenthal did. But I moved on to other areas, and he spent more time in electronic monitoring. So what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of touch upon what that job looks like for you all, okay? See if that's of interest to you. What are the pros and cons to having these sanctions? How does it work? What are the concerns that we have? What does the military cases look like, okay? And why are we supervising military cases? These are the, and why are we not giving a pass to the military folks? Why are they criminally convicted? These are some of the concerns that we have, but anyway, Scott, why don't you come up and talk about the electronic monitoring sex offenders and military cases?
So you are all, I hate the fact that I have two phones, but I do, and you probably heard me purposely talk out loud, charge up your GPS unit and stuff like that. So you have the technology these days to really track people. So whether it be the camera, so you like, for instance, sometimes people don't know, you walk into Walmart, what happens when you walk into Walmart? Anybody have an idea what happens when you walk into Walmart? Anybody want to take a guess?
Loss prevention.
Huh?
Loss prevention.
How does that work in Walmart?
Very well.
Why? What do they do?
They're all over, eyes everywhere.
Okay, so you pass through those doors, you'll see a little camera on top of those doors. Facial recognition. It tracks you through the whole store. Okay? And they can watch you and watch you what you take and when you got out. So you say to yourself, oh, the little helper out there checks my receipt stuff. They don't check your receipt, but they know what you checked out and what you put in your cart. If they want to, if they got the eyes on you. So you're getting a digital, you're getting digitally scanned when you're going through there. What the problem with that is, it's very what? Very labor intensive. So we have, because it's a violent sexual offender program with Liberty Health, I only have 4 cases. 3 right now, I'm really lucky. But they're all on GPS. So most of the time I'm not checking their well, 2 are in lockdown and 1's working and going all over the place. And probably, I'll check his GPS periodically to make sure he stayed on the path that was okay for him. And the poor guy, he goes to work, does he break the law when he goes to work? Technically every day. Because you can't not travel in the city of Chicago and not pass a child care or a school or a park and stuff like that. But I check to see some periodically if he stayed on his path. If something happened in the area he lives in, CPD can give me a ring and I can go then check his GPS. But I get the alert that he leaves the house about 4:30. I get the alert that when he comes back, and so it's more preventative. Sometimes in the federal probation, we didn't do GPS. We still don't do GPS, to my knowledge, simply because we didn't want to be liable. Well, administration, that's a whole other thing. But the truth matters, it's too labor intensive to track if you stole goods from Walmart. But when they kind of do their inventory, this, that, or someone reviews the camera stuff for the day, they can tell. Now they get a picture of you and they put that picture into the system, so next time you come into Walmart, they got good eyes on you and they're looking to catch you stealing and stuff like that. And they make money anyhow. So, but my point is you have GPS, you have electronic monitoring, you have the ability, I did DUI and domestic violence private practice, you have the ability for that ankle unit, that GPS ankle unit, to also test your sweat to see if you consume some drugs or drink alcohol. So you get a DUI, they put the breathalyzer in the car, which is real silly because you always have just someone else blow into the breathalyzer to start your car, okay? And you don't, there's so many ways to bypass that. Why don't you just do the sweat analysis? Why didn't they do the sweat analysis? Your DUI cost, a poor person with a DUI is going to cost them $5,000 to $10,000 plus for the DUI. It's going to cost them an extra $100, I don't even know what it is now, a month to put the breathalyzer in their car. Little extra insurance and stuff. So, but the technology is there, but it's pretty labor intensive. The cool thing about Cook County Jail was, how did their camera system work? Did it work well?
They didn't have one.
Well, they did, so it was kind of old school. But what did the inmates do to the camera system? Huh?
Covered it up.
Yeah, well, just broke it. Just pulled wires and stuff, and it got too expensive to maintain. So they said, okay, we had the cameras there. Just none of them work. None of them work. So technology is pretty expensive, and so I'm not going to talk politics, but it's kind of interesting to see where criminal justice will go. And all I would say to you is in trying to figure out the system, always be aware of that financial part of it. Because technically, we can track people pretty well, okay? Liberty Health makes its money in the 500-bed institution in Rushville, Illinois. It's in 7 or 8 states. California's the biggest. They make their money in the incarceration end. They don't make their money so much on the supervision end, but they had to legally show that the program was discharging people, and that legal need to show that it was discharging people was increased when their maximum bed capacity of 500 was now over the 500 limit, and they're getting lawsuits from that too. So the kind of money drives some of those things. So it's all good and well that we're going to have an opiate, and you don't want to hear my political views on drugs, but you're going to have, the president talk about the war on drugs. How effective is the war on drugs? Let's leave it alone. But there's money to be made there. So almost worked for the railroad, BSF or whatever. what's his name? Warren Buffett's railroad system is. There's railroad police that do all the railroad yards and checkouts and stuff like that. They do exceptionally well. Almost work for United, so you get all the police and the security systems in the airports. We have friends, or at least I have a couple friends that work for TSF, but that's contracted out. So while they're not really federal employees. Why'd they contract that out? What makes the world go round? What don't you have to pay contract workers? Benefits. So in the long run, it costs the government a lot of money to contract out certain things, but on the flip side, you don't have to be benefits. Okay? And so those places are on the cheap a little bit. They're not going to pay you as well. But, you know, if you were head of security at Walmart, as with your criminal justice degree, they do okay. And then if you're head of theft control places and stuff like that, they're not bad jobs. They're not bad jobs. As you move up the system there and supervise people and hire people, and there's a lot of those places that you just don't know. As a semi-retired from the federal probation, $22 an hour to do court security at the federal courthouse. How many times are there problems in the federal courthouse? Well, the one guy escaped at one time and he shot and killed him, but hardly ever. I mean, it's just a cake job. You're walking around the federal courthouse getting $22 an hour. Again, you got to know somebody, and it's basically ex-federal employees in CPD. But I was supposed to talk about the private institutions. They're just, the sky's the limit in terms of private corrections. There's just the sky's the limit. Technology's there. You know, the other ones that are getting a lot of scrutiny with GPS are domestic violence offenders, because then you can put a protective zone about the victims, and so you get an alert when they come, the victims. Again, a lot of the stuff is just driven by money and whether the state wants to employ you. But if you get into the Cook County Sheriff's Office and you get out of Cook County Jail and you work as a sheriff's officer out on the street, you're doing a lot of that stuff. And a lot of people like that, having the car and having the freedom. It's not a bad job. It's harder to get, and it's harder to get out of the gate. But if you know somebody, the sheriff's there. The state troopers do pretty well. State and stuff like that. There's just a lot of things, little private institutions that do well. Some of the mental health. There aren't any mental health institutions left too much, but like Madden. But a lot of the halfway houses, a lot of the SROs and stuff like that will pay their security pretty good. I don't know why they want those jobs, but it would do the one thing that I think is fun once you graduate, and one thing that I think is needed once you graduate. And what is that? When you see my career path, what can you say about my career path? A lot of experience. I'm not going to necessarily want to hire you so much out of. It's great that you're getting some familiar juvenile stuff like that, but what will separate you from your competitor and all the people competing for jobs is especially in criminal justice, they want you to have that experience, because there's a good portion of you that once you experience criminal justice are going to say, what are you going to say?
Yay.
Huh?
I would say yay, but. I don't
You're
know.
gonna say, no, maybe I wanna be a school teacher. Maybe I wanna do something different. So I was going to be a behavior disorder school teacher and looked forward to the day when someone would keep calling me coach. And then I went to Chicago Public Schools to do my student teaching. And, part of it was just the poor teacher's armpits would be yellow by the end of the day. She probably had a little diabetes and stuff like that. But the kids, talking about juvenile, you could have it, the kids were crazy. It was rough. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna go become a social worker. Okay? I'm gonna become a social worker. And so then I took that crazy path. But some of you will say this, maybe it's not for you, and so you want to try to figure out who you might want to work with, what kind of area you might want to work with, and start to get a little experience. Especially if you're really going to work with the criminal population. Because what Brent's trying to tell you is, what's the most challenging thing about working with the criminal population? Or better yet, what's not necessarily the most challenging thing about working with the criminal population? Especially once they're out. There's some that should never be let out, but so they don't qualify. But typically, what's the least challenging part of working with the criminal population?
Turnover?
No, it's not their criminality. It's not that they're kind of criminals and cheat. The most challenging part is that they have little skills to make it out in the public. They don't have much education. They don't have much work experience. They typically have very few family members or friends that aren't also doing drugs and criminal stuff. So it's not them personally, it's not them as a person that's just somehow criminal. It's just they got nothing going. They got real, trying to get them, and I know my guy that just called in once off the program. He gets up at 4:30 in the morning, takes the bus for 45 minutes to the food chicken thing. He sits in a freezer pressing buttons as your chicken breasts go through the machine to be frozen and packaged. And 8 hours later it goes. They have mandatory 6-day work week. And sometimes you can work 7 for extra time and a half. They tell them, it's like prison, they tell them what to do. Why? Because this chicken distributor is like one of the top employers of who? Who are they? Who's their?
Tyson?
Who?
Tyson?
No,
Dick Tyson.
no, I'm not going to name them. They hire ex-offenders.
Oh.
They treat them like, and they're used to that part of it. But he gets up. He knows that he's got to keep this job for the next year. Come August 1st, when he goes in front of the judge and he says he's paying all his bills, he's worked a job for a year, he's done the program for 3 years, he has a pretty good shot of free man, totally free. Doesn't have to call me when he's meeting this bus, and he's pretty motivated. I think he'll succeed. I really think he'll succeed. The other one was 78. Everybody felt sorry for him, even though he killed a 3-year-old. But we won't go into that. You got it. When you say, "Oh my God," there are a certain percentage of the criminal population that are "Oh my God" people. And when you're 78, you're pretty harmless. And you see his reading and writing levels of 5th grade. The family was just, now mind you, he did 50 years in the prison system. But for the most part, what Brent is trying to tell you a little bit is this: the support system and their skill level is pretty low. And so as you think about your career, they want experience. They want you to go in there and know how to deal with people. And know how to, whether this is the population you want. And so even now you're in Loyola, think about if you can, whether it be volunteering or getting a little side job, but start accumulating. And even though you'll graduate with a lovely Loyola degree, a place that you can always start is in that institutional corrections and community corrections. So whether you wanted to be a community corrections counselor at the Salvation Army, at Catholic Charities, they won't pay you much, but there's those opportunities to work in those institutions as well, into the community corrections, and they want you to get that experience. Sex offenders pay money. People pay me big money because of the cases. Anybody interested in the military? So it's not a bad option. Military police get to travel all around, get you your experience. You'll get paid for that experience. I'm a bleeding heart liberal social worker that at the age of 58 fell in love with the military. So much so that I went to Africa for a year and worked at a military base. But it is something to consider. Again, how that career path and how easy it works out for you. Another option always out there is the military.
How did your cases look like? Like, what were they like based on? Just on the cases like people committing on base, or like what did that entail specifically, or at least a broad category? Did it have to do with like?
What does that say?
Suspend logic.
Your cases, sometimes it's just goofy things. Sometimes they're criminal stuff. When the military police on base and stuff like that, basically, what's your first function that you're going to be dealing with?
The family there?
The first function. What? Huh? Alcohol issues. Okay? And the second one is fighting. So whether it was your buddy or a spouse, okay? The third thing is going to be what? Ladies, what's the third thing? Huh?
What? Relationships? Like.
Relationships.
Yeah.
So domestic violence, sexual assault.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing in Djibouti, Africa, for the year were sexual assaults.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, you're living in close proximity. You're this and that. Biggest, you're away from home. You're in Africa, for God's sake. That's it. He said, she said. Alcohol, relationship problems. It's the same thing. Stealing once in a while.
I asked because my husband's in the Marines,
Mhm.
so he's right now like stationed. He was in Japan, but in Okinawa, and he got stationed to right now to Camp Pendleton, Oceanside area. So that's why I asked when we to Cali in January.
Criminals, military people, college students, man about town, we are all the same. They do the same stupid stuff that everybody else does. They don't do it the criminals tend not to do it as well. They're not real quick on the uptake. But they do it, it's all the same most of the time. Every now and then it's horrendous, but very tough.
For sake of time, we're gonna quickly move on. So I did intensive cases. Basically what that means is that violent history, high-ranking street-level gangsters, then I would supervise them. Witness security cases, anybody who turned evidence.
Rats.
Rats, So because it's high security, I just want to let you know that's why I did, but I'm not gonna go into details. Okay. Intensive cases, I could talk a little bit on that. There are a lot of people, and especially on a federal level, we target people who are at the upper echelon. of criminal organizations, and oftentimes when you get the lieutenants and the soldiers, it's usually to squeeze them for information so as to get more high-level folks. Okay. Now, having said that, what I want to kind of talk to you about is this. Correctional careers are not as well advertised in the media like front-end law enforcement. How many FBI shows are there on TV? Okay, and I assure you, every one of them are not real. Okay, they don't get to solve crime every single week. Okay, there's no such thing. How many cop shows are there on TV? A lot, right? Because why? Because it's sexy. Okay, let's be honest. It's cool to have a badge and a gun and look real
There's
good.
Prison Break, The Orange is the New Black.
Oh, those are funny though. They're not sexy. They're funny. Oh, I only saw a couple of episodes.
They're pretty good.
Okay. So the point is this. Oftentimes we get brainwashed into thinking that we have to be on the front line with a badge and a gun and that real cool outfit, with the flak jacket that says, sheriff or police or FBI or whatever. And then, every one of them looks awesome, right? But I assure you, the best officers I met were not anything like that. They had a big pot belly. They look goofy. Have you ever guys seen a TV show called Columbo from the 70s? You did? Don't admit to that because you're aging yourself.
Like you have to talk about live PD because that's where it's at today.
Yeah.
All the live stuff.
So the best police officers I met were people who just knew the facts, not the appearance. Okay. So if you really want to understand police work or even at a federal level, these investigations, they don't look like typical. You know what I'm saying? They're very intelligent people. And so what I'm trying to appeal to you is that develop this muscle, not this, okay? This is useless. There are people who specialize in these and they're good at it, but they're far and few in between. Most of the work is done with this. Things that you see, things that you hear, things that you gather through conversations. That requires you to be very smart. And I'm kind of glad that most of you here are women, because I assure you women are better at that kind of stuff than men. Much of the big work, important work that are being done in the correctional field are done by women because they can connect, engage the people who are coming out of prison, and they could calm them down. Okay? And oftentimes you hear about all of these problems out in the street, right? Why? Because it did not have to get to that level of somebody getting shot and get killed, right? If they had learned how to de-escalate the situation. And women are better at that, okay? So I just want to appeal to you to really be thinking about not just having to carry a gun and a badge and like being the baddest whatever on the street, but really think about how you can, in plain clothes, unassuming, be able to enter an arena where there's a problem and you be able to bring about the necessary information, intelligence that you need to gather, okay? That's the kind of stuff might be very rewarding to some of you, okay? So in correctional field, I assure you, doing these two, I get called on many times to kind of be part of the investigation. I had to decline it because I work for an entirely different system. Another factor I want to share with you, the reason why correctional field does not get the limelight with the media is because generally the correctional field works for the third branch. Okay, so there's three branches of government, right? Executive, legislative, and judiciary. On a federal level, we work for the Supreme Court and down. Okay, what that means is that we cannot promote ourselves. Even if we do something great, we cannot promote ourselves. That's not within our ethos, okay? Whereas the executive branch, that they're gonna try to play it up, okay? Look what we did, and everybody shows up to the podium, has a big media showing going on. We don't do that, okay? It's because in judiciary, you do not showboat, okay?
It's not entirely true.
That's not
Why
entirely
don't,
true.
why don't we do that? Because your superiors, whether it be at the federal level, the county level, the city level, what will get you in the most trouble is when your face appears on the television. So it's not even that, it's just, you really, those that are appearing on TV or saying this or that are not well thought of and find themselves in some pretty hot water periodically.
So,
The whole idea is to avoid that.
so in judiciary, in that third branch, we do not try to promote ourselves, okay? For that reason and for many others, because it's not our job. Our job is to really interpret the law and enforce the court orders, okay? But it requires a tremendous amount of brain power in being able to do that, okay? So I want to just present that to you as an option, as a correctional field requires a lot of people who are well trained to be able to go all the way to the front end, to the middle, and to the tail end. As a probation office is a bit of a misnomer. It really is, you don't do a whole lot of probation work. You actually do other stuff, such as you do pretrial supervision, pretrial investigation, you do pre-sentence investigations, you do a whole lot of stuff for the judges and an ongoing sentencing process. And after that, you do pre-release investigations, you do pre-release monitoring. After that, then you have the community corrections, okay? Even within the institutional corrections, there's a lot of specialized units that do investigation because there's a lot of stuff that are happening even from the inside, directing the outside what to do, okay? So there's a lot of that stuff going on. It's a very exciting work. It doesn't often get portrayed as well and fancy as all the other federal agencies on the front end. But it's an exciting work, and so I hope that you'll take interest in that. As I've shown you earlier, there's close to 7 million people who needs to be supervised out in the community. Saves our country a whole lot of money. Just to give you a final figure, the amount of money that are spent on criminal justice system is a 1/3 of our national deficit. It's huge. We're talking billions and billions of dollars, okay? But reality is, therefore, there's job opportunities. How you get in there is like what Mr. Rosenthal said, get the experience you need. Don't feel like you gotta go straight into that top level. It doesn't work that way. I didn't get in here until I was age 33, okay? I built up a lot of different experiences before I got in, okay? I'm glad I got in, I took benefit of that, advantage of that, but it took a while. So now, we'll stay for another 10 more minutes. Any questions? Yes?
What would you say for both of you was the most rewarding part of being a probation officer in your respective fields?
Of the probation officer stuff? The nicest part of being a probation officer at the federal level was the money. I liked dealing at the county jail level. Was my favorite. If it weren't for the fact that I had 2 children, I would have not left. The probation, as Mr. In was suggesting to you, was the kind of job that with the feds, he had mandatory retirement at 57, but what you saw was as everybody approached the 15 to 20 year mark, I don't care what you hear, it was such hard work. There was so much going on. You were always behind. Someone's always doing something. Someone's always testing positive, getting into more criminal trouble, being investigated. You get telephone complaints. It was a pretty tough, stressful job, and the people were interesting. So I mean, it was kind of fun to read, do some of the investigations and stuff. But I found of all the jobs I've had, the probation officer work was the hardest. But it was financially rewarding, and so it kept me there for 20 years.
The thing about federal probation is that it allows you to work approximately 50 hours per week, would you say? It just required that much effort out of you. But then you had the freedom to do whatever else you wanted to do. So Mr. Rosenthal did some crazy stuff. We did other stuff to, you know, like we needed more money. Right? So they did pay very well. On a federal level, they pay very well. But think about this. When Mr. Rosenthal says it was one of the hardest works, you're going to be tested to the limit. You're going to be pushed. Every report that comes out off your desk has to be perfect, okay? Because that becomes a national record. Right? So just think about every week you have to come up with the final exam, almost final exam paper. That kind of quality work, constantly. Of course, you get good at it, but after a while. And then you have to be out in the field and all that. For me, the most rewarding thing was being able to be that agent of change. Because I think that's where I got, especially dealing with these guys. These were very violent, very important people at one point in time, and they're now in hiding, as it just really changes their psychology. And being able to help that was extremely fascinating. It was a great, tremendous experience, something that I would never, ever have gotten anywhere else. Okay? So I can speak on that, on human behavior, with much more authority than others who may have just a simple PhD, okay? Only because I've been involved in that. That was very rewarding, but I had to agree with Mr. Rosenthal. Pay was exceptionally good. But you do have to work. I mean, you have to be willing to work. And when I say 50 hours per week, even though they only clock you for 40 hours, I mean 50 and some plus. Meaning you're going to take your work home with you. Okay, Mr. Rosenthal was an electronic monitoring specialist. He had a beeper, pager. Did you have a pager?
I used to hear it in my sleep. I'd be dreaming. I'd wake up thinking my phone was ringing and it wasn't. It was horrible.
And you have to respond to that. So there's a high demand, and it interferes with your life. Okay, your private life. Your wife's not happy. Your children are not happy. Your dog is not happy. You know. Stuff like that. Your parents are not happy. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
I haven't looked into it, but you guys said like the probation like financially is good, but is that been like still good now?
At a federal level, yeah. I mean, you know, we walk, you know, it's a six-figure income.
What's happened at the federal level is that for our 20 years with the federal probation, we got a step increase every year. Still, now it's finally reached the point, even at the federal level, where you get frozen for a year. You start a little bit lower. The cost of living raises aren't as great. And if you put 20 years, if you figure every year you're getting an increase in the cost of living increase, after 20 years it amounts to a heck of a lot of money. So that the probation officers hired today will make as much money as we did, probably not. But it'll come pretty close. It'll come close. And there's the difference between the federal, state, county, federal figure a third better. Plus it has a pension.
And you guys said like when you guys got to federal probation, like you guys first got like I guess other experiences.
I was 37, he was 33. So I didn't get it. I got hired right before the cutoff. No, 35. I take that back.
The cutoff is one.
Now you have to be. Now they don't hire you after 37. You have to be 37 or younger. When I hired, it was 35.
Is it just with a bachelor's? Do you get more certificates and stuff like that?
Well, I had masters.
Generally, if you want to go into the federal level, you want to have master's or doctorate or JD. Only because the jurisdiction is so complicated, it requires that much. And that's why if you have a lot of experience, that helps. Because now you're able to think. Otherwise, if you come in, we've had some people with the master's level come in and there's a struggle because they can't grasp the concepts. It's just really challenging. Okay? We've had few though, I think they were exceptionally bright people, they had their bachelor's degree, but they had other work experience, and they came on and but I don't know, you start lower paid, but you know, you could stay on, you could be trained within the agency. Yeah, they give you a gun and a badge.
If you would say to, for like the masters, like what would you say recommending, like what field that like will help you better for probation officer?
I'm gonna tell you what I was told by this chief out of, two chiefs, one at a federal chief and then one of county level chief. They wanted social workers. Not because social workers, the liberal, left-wing liberal, bleeding heart types are the best for the job. Not because of that, but because they are trained to make changes, okay? And they're not trained to make changes just here, but change in a person within the environment, okay? So they have that training that is, matches that need very well, is what I was told, okay?
And I'd say that's changed a little bit. So the criminal justice, provided you have the experience. But when we didn't talk about, you know, FBI, CIA, postal inspectors, marshal's office and stuff like that. But at the federal level, they like a master's. So how employable is someone with a master's in accounting? FBI is going to say, hey, come on board, because so much what they're doing is financial and financial crimes and stuff like that. So it's not, when you ask what kind of specialty, it depends what you want to, what do you like to do, what would you like, and then the hard thing about being, you know, undergraduates and being there is that you sometimes don't really understand what we're trying to say to you is there are so many little specialties within the criminal justice system that you just can't imagine where your specialty is going to be. You get ruined by the TV a little bit, but you know, just think about investigating financial crimes.
One specialty, if you speak language, Spanish, that would give you a huge boost, okay?
Chinese or Russian might help you out a whole lot too going forward.
Okay. Spanish would be very helpful. So if you have forgotten Spanish, brush up on it. If you don't know Spanish, brush, you know, take some Spanish courses. Are you just scratching your head? You got your hand up. You have a question? Yeah, how about you, Grace? You've been looking at me like, is there a question for me, Grace? Justin?
I'm okay.
Okay. How about you?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anybody? Are we all good? All right, so good luck to you all, okay?
Thank you. Can we just get